I know you love Marvel movies. And I also know you're sitting on the toilet doing dishes or folding laundry. So do yourself a favor and fill that crushing silence with MCU trivia that will make your friends think you actually read the comics with 10 changes they made from the comics for the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Something even your non-nerd friends know is the lineup of the Avengers in the MCU. But something only your super nerd friends will know are the major changes the MCU made to the initial Avengers lineup. Turns out in the Avengers #1, Ant-Man and the Wasp were much more than just part of the extended universe. They were part of the original team, joining Thor, Hulk, and Iron Man. The Wasp even gave the fledgling team their name. Take a hike, Black Widow and Hawkeye. But wait, what about Captain America? He totally would have been a member of the original Avengers, but he was busy being frozen in a block of ice. Luckily for him, the Avengers revived him in the Avengers #4, and he joined them from then on. Speaking of Ant-Man and Wasp, a big change from the comics and the original Avengers is that we're not actually seeing the original Ant-Man and Wasp who helped found the Avengers. The movie takes a different tact. It presents the original Ant-Man as an old elderly statesman. And thank God, because I could watch Michael Douglas all day. And in the movie, he's training the new Ant-Man, Scott Lang.
Welcome to Baskin Robbins. Would you like to try our mango fruit blast?
Scott Lang's story shares a lot of similarities with the comics, but a huge difference is it's the original Ant-Man, Hank Pym, who's there when the Avengers begin. Scott Lang doesn't come around for decades after the Avengers are formed in the comics. Then in Ant-Man and the Wasp, we're also dealing with second-generation superheroes as well, as the original Wasp, Janet Van Dyne, played by Michelle Pfeiffer, has to be rescued from the quantum realm by the new Ant-Man and Hope Van Dyne, the new Wasp. Iron Man, aka Tony Stark, is a fun-loving, life-of-the-party womanizer. His character basically launched Marvel movies into what we know today.
In 3, 2, 1.
But in Iron Man #128, we discover that he's also an alcoholic. Jesus, that's a scary drawing. Such an effective deterrent. Well, I'm never doing alcohol again. The Demon in a Bottle comic arc shows Tony turning to alcohol when things keep going wrong. On his way back from blowing up an island, as you do, his armor begins to malfunction, sending him crash landing back to Earth. But mysteriously, there's nothing wrong with his armor. Later, he's invited to meet a foreign ambassador at a function representing his company, Stark International, but his suit malfunctions again, accidentally killing the ambassador with a repulsor blast. And to deal with his guilt, Tony falls deep into an alcoholic stupor, going so far as to yell at his butler Jarvis, who resigns the next day. But eventually, Tony discovers that his suit was malfunctioning due to an evil competitor, Justin Hammer, and after sinking Hammer's evil island, quits drinking, and Jarvis returns. Jeez, Iron Man really hates islands. Thanos' motivation for killing half the universe's population was very different in the comics. In the movies, we all know Thanos kills half of a planet's population because he thinks he has to, in a genocidal, pruning sort of cut off the branches so the tree can grow kind of way, which turns out to be a lot more grounded than his motivation in the comics. As a kid, in the comics, Thanos' superpower was that no one liked him, and a nice-seeming young girl would constantly show up encouraging him to kill things. First, small things, then people. And since she was the only one who paid him any mind, he fell in love with her. So far, sounds pretty reasonable, until she reveals herself to be literal death. No, not Norm Macdonald on Family Guy death.
Hey, that's a good one.
A female who represented the concept of death. So when he found this out, he thought, well, I don't hate killing people, and she's hot, so why not? Typical man. I guess Thanos likes cheekbones.
No, wait, I'm not finished holding my sides.
In the Iron Man comics, the Mandarin was Tony Stark's very serious and very real nemesis. But in Iron Man 3, he turns out to be a total fake, played by a bumbling British actor.
Wouldn't go in there for 20 minutes.
A decoy for the real villain. Fans were upset that they didn't get to see this major Iron Man baddie until Shang Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings fixed those burned bridges. But did you know the Mandarin with his 10 rings wasn't Shang-Chi's original dad or enemy? Turns out the big bad from the Shang-Chi comics was Fu Manchu. Later known to Marvel Comics as Zheng Zu after a copyright dispute, Zheng Zu was a genius master sorcerer, but not the wielder of the 10 rings. The MCU did a bit of a mashup, and it honestly worked really well. Why'd they replace him? Let's just say Twitter would have imploded if they decided to go with Zheng Zu, who is more of a caricature. Shang-Chi definitely benefits from the more well-rounded, three-dimensional Mandarin, whose name is also updated in the Shang-Chi movie to the more appropriate Su Wenwu. Now, no one's angry. Vulture is one of my personal favorite MCU villains, not only because of the creative update Spider-Man Homecoming gave to the series, but also because his backstory was so deliciously three-dimensional. I actually started siding with him. Like, come on, Peter, the government stole his business. Can't he steal just one thing? Vulture in the comics is more of an evil villain caricature obsessed with evil doing than the MCU's folksy, blue-collar family man. He's an old man who invented a harness that lets him fly and gives him super strength, who turned to criminality after he discovered his business partner was stealing from the company. Look at this guy! The horrors of old age, I guess. Michael Keaton is a huge upgrade from whatever this is. Another great twist for the Spider-Man series was when Spider-Man Homecoming revealed that the character Zendaya was playing was, spoiler alert, actually Spider-Man's comic book love MJ all along.
My friends call me MJ.
This led to mixed reactions, as the MJ of the comics is pretty much the polar opposite of Zendaya's MJ. In the comics, MJ is a college-aged actress model who puts a lot of stock into how she looks, but she knows she's hot as f***, which is why she's so confident in her pursuit of an entertainment career. In the MCU's Spider-Man, MJ is a rebellious punk rock teenager who's fighting the system, doesn't care what she looks like, and has one of the funniest lines in the series, which is maybe a knock to the original MJ.
You look really pretty.
Therefore, I have value.
Classic. Thor in the comics was very different from the Thor we see on screen, and it has a lot to do with the casting of Chris Hemsworth. His natural charisma took a mostly serious character from the comics and transformed him into the funny, frat guy, god of thunder with a heart of gold that we know and love today. His fish out of water moments in the original Thor were definitely the highlights, and the writers expanded that to the much more lighthearted and funny Thor Ragnarok. And then we got Fat Thor, which is so fun. I can't even imagine the world without him. The Thor from the comics was also way overpowered, which may work on a comic book page, but in a movie leads to what I like to call Captain Marvel syndrome. You know, when a character is so powerful there's hardly any conflict, which is maybe why she's always off on other planets before they need a quick resolve to the plot. In a huge upgrade, the MCU made Peter Quill, aka Star-Lord's father, way more interesting. In the comics, his name was Jason, and his character was pretty basic. An evil dictator bent on universe domination, eventually being known as Mr. Knife. Mr. Knife. What would I be, Mr. Keyboard? Mr. One-A-Day Vitamin? For the movies, they merged Star-Lord's dad with another Marvel Comics character, Ego, the Living Planet. In the MCU, Star-Lord's dad impregnates many women in hopes that one of his children will be worthy and help him with his plan to literally grow and spread and become everything, aka killing everything in the universe. Luckily, Star-Lord puts a stop to that after he learns that Ego is the reason his mom died of cancer.
You shouldn't have killed my mom and squished my Walkman.
Captain America Civil War was a refreshing look at another angle of superhero drama, focusing on the carnage superheroes create in their wake. The comic book storyline differed from what we got in the movies in that, in the comics, no one knew any of the superheroes' real identities. So the government not only wanted them to register and answer to them, but also reveal their secret identities, endangering them in their personal lives and their families. In the movies, they really just wanted to remain freelance and not beholden to any government, which is still a good conflict, but many fans were upset at the lower stakes. Steak. Looks like it's time for Mr. Knife. Look at you, all prepared to go to your next party with some interesting facts to bore your friends with. But who are we kidding? You're not going to parties. You're sitting at home watching Marvel movies. So I guess what I meant to say was, now you can pwn noobs on message boards with your ill-gotten knowledge. Mazel.